Hi and welcome to the 100th edition of The Pursuit of Truth, and it is the 2nd of July 2018. I thought I would sort of talk a little bit about where I've come. It's not really that far, to be honest, since the very first podcast, which was only like a few months ago, to be honest with you. I think I make too many of them too quickly, but they're only like a few minutes, so it's not like that long. But yeah, when I started this, I'd already sort of seen a lot of videos on YouTube, which had made me question where I am, the things I've been told. Now, some of this I'd already thought about years before. I think a lot of it was to do with my poem writing, because when you write poetry, you tend to, I don't know, like when I do anyway, it tends to, go into things you wouldn't think about naturally, because you're writing it down. And some of the stuff I wrote was like dramatic verse, like The Dead City, the Nightmare Collection, things like that. CQ, and it was, there'd be a lot of it about, there's like loss, there's death, there's where we're living, how we live. A lot of it, I guess, was about how we live, because if you read, I think it's in Dead City, there's and I think I've mentioned this a few times, the idea of like us wasting our human endeavours, making thousands of the similar products just for profit, because that's how our world is run. So yeah, there were a few things that I'd already cottoned on to, as it were. So I was sort of maybe one eye awake or half awake, whatever you want to call it. Like the same with the Iraq War, Afghanistan War. I actually thought 9/11 was true, but I thought that I knew the war was a fabrication, that there was no weapons of mass destruction, and we were being lied to. But it was interesting when I first, because I was listening to YouTube and I was watching videos about false flag and conspiracies and things like that, and they awoken my mind to, the possibilities, other arguments, other sides of the story. It's very easy for us to always trust in that, that's from the mainstream, i.e. like big TV companies, big newspaper companies, the government, officials, scientists, all sorts of people who carry some kind of academia or power, or we tend to follow them. So that made me aware of, like Ollie Damagard, Jim Fetzer, people like that, who questioned the narrative of these false flag events. And when I was starting to watch these, a lot of it, I could see how, I could see patterns, especially with Ollie Damagard. He pulled out a lot of patterns of different terrorist events that have happened around, especially Europe. I started to question those, and then I came onto Flat Earth, which I'd seen a few times, and I know, obviously, when I was listening to other conspiracies, people was suggesting that Flat Earth may be a psyop where, it was just put out there to distract you from things. Which at first I thought, okay, that makes sense, because it seems like, I also thought, well, how can that be true? That's too far now, and obviously in my mind I pictured the edge of the earth and falling off it, which I don't know where that's from, but we all seem to think it. But then when one day I did actually click on it and thought, okay, let me listen. I don't remember what it was, whether it was on, whether it was Eddie Bravo talking, I don't know. I know I listened to Jamie Brown, I know I listened to, was it OBD, Eric Dubai, things like that at the beginning, so I don't know which order it was in. But yeah, there were some things in there that I never, I don't know at what point, but I started listening, and then I started to think about these things that I never thought about before. And it's interesting, whether you believe in conspiracy theories or false flag or flat earth or, all these things. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. Well, it does, because there's the difference between truth and falsehood. But what I mean is it helps your mind develop a healthy questioning of things around you. Because there's a title on my podcasts, which is Think Without Thinking. And I think, to use that word again, unfortunately, it's this thing that we don't actually do enough of. We tend to sit down and watch television, and, we're fed the news. Now, like I've mentioned many times, the news, if you go around the country, around the world, it's often the same stories. And you think that, well, how is it possible that they're broadcasting the same thing? And then you've got to think about the idea of propaganda. Anyone who studied the Second World War or Russia will know ideas of propaganda and how powerful it is. I mean, if it wasn't powerful, they wouldn't have used it. I mean, even we, when I say we, the British in the Second World War used propaganda to get people to fight. I mean, it's still done to this day with the likes of Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden. That's propaganda, They don't even need to be the head of their organisation. They're just picked because they have to be, the figurehead. You have to have someone to hate. It's like, that's the Big Brother ethic, isn't it? So, yeah, I think even if it's healthy to question. And I think anyone who starts to say to you that I don't think it's a good idea to question things, you should just believe, or how silly of you to question, or don't you think that you're an idiot, thinking that the Earth's flat, or that, oh, it's so terrible of you to think that these people, they were involved in something that wasn't real. The fact is, to not think is the worst thing possible. The other thing is, we have been conditioned. We've been schooled, which I've mentioned many a times. And it looks like this 100th one is just sort of a roundabout my top 10 of thoughts. But this is very important, because I was thinking this the other day, that how if I said to someone, that I've been going through this passport thing or whatever, and if I said, like, I don't want to follow your rules, I just want to do whatever, and they said, no, you have to. Wait a minute, but why? Stop for 1 second and ask yourself, why do we do the things we do? Are they intrinsic? Are they natural? I'm not talking about hippie things or stuff like that. I'm talking about the idea of not to diminish any of that, but the idea that everything we do is been invented, has been thought by the people before us. But the thing is, if you try and challenge that thought to, like, people will not question it. It's I don't know where it gets ingrained in our brain. I guess it's just part of the the overall schooling. The fact that everything that you're taught from that age, that's what you then believe. And that's why it's very difficult to then get yourself out of that training. It's a bit like I guess if you study cults and how they not brainwash, but how they induce people into the cults and they believe the things, and they can go to extreme lengths, like kill themselves for their cult leader. It's very powerful, and their whole mindset can be different coming from another type of person. Well, that's exactly what happens when we're born, through schooling, through television, through parents, through siblings, through people close to us. We are a cult. Humanity is a cult. We have our set of teachings. Each country will have slightly variations, but a lot of it is very similar. But the thing is, we don't see it like that. If you told someone humanity is a cult, actually that's going to be the title of this, actually, they'd laugh at you and say, no, it's not. They don't realise the fact that we were born, like, I was thinking how amazing it is the other day, the twins, how they started from my wife and me, a bit of me and my bit of my wife, the smallest fraction of us, and yet they've made this beautiful babies that laugh, and you look at their eyes, and sometimes, I know I've written a poem about this, like, I feel sorry for what they're going to have to lose, because at the moment they're so happy, they're so beautiful, they're so joyful, but we will break them down and make them into working machines. I mean, it sounds like a plot from George Orwell, you know, but this is actually what we're living, and we all follow that. We're all members of this cult. But it's true, I'm not making this up. You know, look at reality, actually stop and think about everything you do and why you do it and where you got it from. It wasn't, you know, like some things, like with babies, they learn to breathe, they learn to crawl. There's some things that they do on their own. We see this through nature as well with animals. But a lot of the rest of the stuff is handed down to us. Like they're watching now cartoons. There'll be lots of bits of information in that, you know, numbers, alphabet, planets, animals, all sorts of things. Yeah? We're ascribing to them names of things that we have no way of knowing the name of this thing. A cow is a cow because we call it a cow. It's not actually a cow. But we've lost sense that we've forgotten that we invented all of this. The cult leaders of humanity are long dead. They may have descendants that carry on their cultish behaviour, and we're all part of it. Even the ones, like even me, we don't even realise it. I will tell my children things. I will do things that are part of being a cult member. Even though I say that, you know, even though I know what I know, we can't help it. And that's the big problem, because I've been through how many years worth of cult indoctrination, i.e. going to school, going to college, watching television, reading newspapers, reading books. Even if they teach you to think for yourself, is that even possible to think for yourself? Because everything I know about thinking is what I've been taught. I wasn't like left in a jungle to work out. It'd be interesting actually what would happen to a person if they were just left out of the rest of humanity. Well, they become wild, isn't it, I think? So they're just a hunter-gatherer. Maybe, is that what we're actually meant to be like? Are we meant to adopt all these cultish behaviours of this? But yeah, obviously we are. We should be. But the problem is we don't understand that we are in that circle at this moment, and we're keeping it alive. You know, I will send my children to school, even though I know that they're going to teach them lies, because there's no other option. I wouldn't be able to do a good enough job of teaching them. Maybe I would, but the thing is they wouldn't pass their exams. Something that we've invented to be able to distinguish people so that some can get jobs and some can't. Our life is so unfair. Everything is about working, everything is about money, everything is about gain. But it doesn't, and like I said before, it doesn't have to be like that. That's the way that the people before us, the cult leaders, that's how they envisaged this world. It happened over time. It happened over different people. They probably started off doing it out of good, because they realised, well, wait a minute, like if we were like cavemen type thing where we just used to hunt and gather, and then we realised that, oh, there's fire, you know, I'll teach someone else that, and I'll build a house, and I'll build a house for that person. Or we need someone to look after us. Who's the biggest? Who's the strongest? We need some, a clever person to think of things. Who's that? And slowly and gradually it moved across until it got taken over by people, who thought that, oh, we can make money out of this. We can breed a nation, breed a whole population just for working. The thing is, I know people listening to this will be thinking that I'm too far out. I'm actually talking reality. This is actually truth. But you may not see it because you're part of the cult mentality. It's like if you meet a cult member of someone and you try and teach them that your teachings are all wrong, don't you realise you're being brainwashed? They won't see it. There's only if you can say something particular, or their mind is open enough to actually stop and look back or look in the reflection. That is the most difficult thing in the world to do. To actually stop and question yourself and question everything around you, because we're not taught to do that naturally. I mean, we are taught to question, but the way our teaching is someone teaches you things and you absorb it and you repeat it. It's repeat, follow, do. You know, that's how we are as a species. We've been taught to work as a collective. But what's the answer, the solution to this? I don't think that this is the problem, that even if everyone woke up from this, well, I suppose, like, how do cults get out of cults and then re-establish themselves back into society? Well, they don't. They just join another cult, isn't it? Humanity. And then as long as they follow what the majority says is okay, then they're okay, and they're no longer in a cult. But we've got to understand that we are in a cult and that we need to change it. We need to stop being part of it. But that is the most difficult thing in the world, because the problem is that all the power is with those cult leaders. They own everything. They own the definition of everything and how everything is done. You know, if you suddenly say, oh, I don't want to be part of this, I don't want to pay things anymore, I don't believe in money, I would get chucked in prison. And no amount of shouting, no amount of truth that came out of my mouth would stop me from being inside that cell. It's interesting, isn't it? It shows that, you know, as much power as I have is not that much unless everyone else is with you. You know, if you had enough people with you, yeah, you could make a difference. But a whole world, how would you change that? I mean, I suppose the thing is, it's going to be over time. We didn't get to this situation by, you know, one person over a few years. We got to where we are now over hundreds of years, over hundreds of different people, thousands, maybe even millions. I don't know how many influential people there have been since we were whatever we were at the beginning and how we are now. So it's going to take time, I guess. I suppose the thing is, all we have to do is actually start waking up. And what I mean by waking up, I mean actually questioning and understanding reality, actual reality. The reality that everything around us is invented, except, you know, obviously, like trees and nature and stuff like that. You know, houses. We didn't start off with houses. We made them ourselves. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them, but what I mean is we have to understand that we invent concepts. That's what humans do. We put things in boxes and we follow things and we keep repeating and repeating and repeating. We even repeat things even when we know they're wrong. And we do nothing about it. We just keep it continuing, you know? That's like every government. Every country is in deficit, but we'll just carry on doing things the same way. There's no way of having a maverick suddenly say, no, we're going to do this. We're going to stop doing all those things. We're going to throw away money. It's unfortunate, but that is the truth. I won't see it in my lifetime. You know, if we are to change, if we are to actually be different, it's going to be in hundreds of years' time. Because I don't think there's going to be any great uprising. It doesn't work that way. And the uprisings, they're usually controlled anyway, and maybe is there even a better solution? You know, it's okay for me to say, oh, you know, all this stuff, the way we live is wrong. You know, the fact that we divide ourselves up in lots of different ways, whether it's race, whether it's country, whether it's gender, whatever way we divide ourselves, so that we don't have to help each other, so that we have medicines that we don't give to people, that we have food that we don't give to people, because everything has to be about money. All these things that are invented, all these concepts. I don't know what is better. I just know that the way we're living is wrong and immoral. And not the best way for all of us. It's good for like 1% of us. The 1% who can do everything that they want. And even like, it's more than 1%, because there's lots of people who are happy in the existence that they have. They have a house, they have a car, they go on holiday, you know, they have a nice job. They think the world's perfect. If you ask them, they say, no, the world's perfect. What are you talking about? I'm happy. My wife's happy. My children are happy. Wait a minute, but are you actually just talking about yourself? Do you not see you're part of a species, of a being, or whatever we are? You know, there is everyone. You may be happy, but what about the people who are suffering? What about the people who are out on the street who are dying at this minute? How many people are dying of medical conditions that we have the answers to, but we can't do it because we have to charge people for it, or because we waste so much time making 1,000 different fairy liquids, what do I call it, washing powder, that we don't have time to make all these vaccines. The technology that we have is enough to keep everyone on this planet alive with food and medicine. There is no big problem with that. We don't need all these different charities asking each of us for money. If we sorted out the whole system of how we are, we could sort this out straight away. We wouldn't need to waste all this time of letting people die needlessly. And this isn't me lying. This is actually the truth. If you actually look at it, that's how it is. We let people die because they're in a different country and we don't have to think about them. We waste our time watching World Cup or reality programs. Can you imagine if there is a God, which I believe there is, and he's looking down at us and he's watching people starving and dying, people begging, people crying for their last breaths, and and some of us are sitting there watching television, having a good time. He must think, why did I bother creating a species that is so selfish, so, not even willing to look at themselves in a mirror and actually make a change, when we can do everything that we like. This world isn't imposed upon us. This world is free to do as we please, and we could do it if we really all wanted, but it won't happen. So maybe I'm actually wasting my breath. Probably I am, aren't I, really? Because it doesn't matter how much sense, even if everyone in the world listened to this and I was actually talking the truth, if there is such a thing, it still wouldn't change, would it? Honestly, do you think it would? Do you have that much? I mean, if you believe that humanity is that great, we wouldn't be letting people die right at this moment. And I'm not saying that go out and give charity and do this, that and the other, because that doesn't help. The thing is, what we need to change is the way we are. Anyway, that's it. That's the 100th edition. Take care, take it easy. God bless, and peace.